If you're working with geodata in an application connected to the United States, especially if you're using demographic or economic data, you're going to get familiar with the United States Census. So the US Census has two kinds of responses, at least, that people are familiar with. One is the Decennial Census, which happens every 10 years, for example, 2020, and that has basic information about how many people live in each household, some information about age, race, and income that is actually collected from every single person in the US. And it's constitutionally required because this ends up affecting how we're represented in Congress, but it's also important that it collects information about demographics, and is also important that it reaches not just US citizens, but anyone who's living here on April 2020, which is regardless of immigration status or um, just make sure if you're living here permanently or semi-permanently, regardless of legal status, you fill out the census. And that information is held in confidence for several decades. Now, that's the decennial census. There's another concept called the American Community Survey. This is sometimes called the long form census. It's sent out to fewer people, but it occurs throughout the decade. So people are responding to this all the time, and we're finding out using statistical methods, those fewer responses we get allow us to find out information about how people are moving around, what kind of jobs people have, whether people commute to work by bicycle or by bus, which is really interesting to city planners. So if you receive one of these surveys, you actually are required to respond. Please don't take it lightly because it affects a lot of how city planning and political mapping is done. If you're just making your own map and you're wondering how does this affect you, what you should know is that the US Census releases information on several different levels based on the data that they have collected. And they do it in a very timely and regular manner. It's sort of the best source of information for data in the United States, and it's free. So most people are familiar with the state and county that they live in. The census further divides up the United States into tracts, which are made out of block groups, which are made out of blocks. And then on the block level, the decennial census will have some basic information, and if you zoom out to the tract level, you'll get some more detailed information. The census is reluctant to share too much information about a block because you might find out very personal information about people or identify certain combinations and traits within a block. So, depending on what information you're getting, you might want to target one of these particular geographies. I should also add this diagram makes it a little confusing. We also, of course, count Alaska and Hawaii. We also include Puerto Rico and I believe the other territories. Those are all available from the census. They also have a good amount of information about the Native American communities and tribal lands that are officially demarcated by the federal government. So, the way that these block groups are identified is using something called a Fips Code. So, every state has a Fips Code. You can see that they're mostly alphabetical. Something like American Samoa shows up in a weird place, but states generally are alphabetical, and inside the state, you'll find the Fips Code. Oh, that's not good. But anyway, inside the state, you'll find that Fips codes continue. So if I do Alabama County Fips codes, we'll see that the first two numbers belong to the state, and then the next three digits belong to the county, because there could be up to a couple hundred counties within a state. Make sure, if you use this, to store it as a string, or you'll run into problems later on. The main thing is we store it with a 0, 1 here, so that you don't have any confusion about how to extract the state from this, regardless of format. So these digits go to the county, and then additional digits are added on for the tract. One more digit gives you the block group, and then the rest of the digits define specific blocks. If you're trying to download this data, the census changes their website a lot, so I can just recommend that you search Census Tiger shapefiles. Tiger is the program for the census mapping program. And you can download these data sets for different years. If you're using the Decennial Census, the last time that was conducted in 2010, so don't try to mix and match files. You go to 2010 and click on this web interface, usually. Again, select 2010, and you can select blocks, block groups, tracts, based on what kind of information you have available, or if for some reason you have data that's connected to congressional districts in 2010, you can download those as well. And you'll be given more options about downloading them in a national file, or for blocks, it will usually give you the option of a particular state, 2010, and that includes District of Columbia as well. If you want the very most recent information, right now they have 2019. Hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a lot of information from the new 2020 census. These would match if you had like the American Community Survey data. You might want to get census tracts and have the most recent ones possible. Just select your state, click download, and you'll have a shapefile. So all these resources and pieces of information are available for every state, and there's an API where you can get lots of additional information. Just be careful when you study it because you want to make sure, what year am I looking at? Am I looking at 2010, the decennial census, where I have information down to the block group? Am I looking at an American Community Survey where I have a lot more information, but it's only divisible down to the tract level? Am I trying to find information about New York, and I have to first look up what's the code, the Fips code that I use for that? In any of these cases, there's really not a one-stop shop where you can find it all out. The census makes it a little bit frustrating to navigate through this interface to download files, but it's all available, it's all free. If you're doing any kind of mapping work inside the United States, this is absolutely the place to go for it.